Being a police officer can give you the sense that you have power over everyone else and thus are untouchable. In today's video, we look at a few officers who blatantly committed a crime and finally get to pay for their actions. If you think being a boy in blue protects you, watch these mighty officers succumb to their entitlement and realize they have been arrested. The first on the list is James M. French. On a Sunday morning at around 1:40 a.m., a patrol officer sees an unmarked city-owned SUV vehicle swerving dangerously on the roads. He manages to catch up with the driver, James Matt French, after pulling into a private driveway on SW Grand Boulevard. Interestingly, the first thing that James says when he realizes he has been caught is that he is a police captain of the Oklahoma City Investigations Unit and wants the officer to turn off his body cam.
Police department.
What police department?
Oklahoma City.
What division?
Investigations.
How much we had to drink tonight, sir? Huh? I'm not turning my camera off.
Okay.
The police officer refuses to turn off his body cam and instead proceeds to do his job. He tells James that he has stopped and apprehended him as he suspects him to be drunk driving. The officer asks James to do a few sobriety tests intent on investigating whether a crime has been committed. Realizing that he will fail the tests, James starts begging the police officer to turn off his body cam so they can talk. However, the officer refuses, saying that he does not show favoritism towards anyone and he has to be fair. For the first time in a long time, we see a police officer willing to do his job regardless of the circumstances. James is arrested for driving under the influence over the weekend. James is suspended from his position as police captain and charged with a DUI. This means he could pay a fine and possibly serve jail time. However, James's entitlement to rank is nothing compared to Jaylen Devon 27 is a perfect example of a man who uses his rank to satisfy his selfish needs, thinking that the fear he instills in his victims makes him powerful. In April 2020, San Diego County Crime Stoppers received a tip that a man was engaging in sexual acts with a juvenile. This led to a thorough investigation, and what was found sent chills down everyone's spines. The police investigation led them to someone who was on their team and supposed to protect the citizens, especially minors. The investigating detective tells Jaylen the charges being brought up against him, including using an account on Snapchat to text minors. The account that shared the photo and the information was called J178211. A seemingly random selection of numbers until you realize that 17 was his college basketball jersey number, 82 was his high school jersey number, and 2011 was the year he graduated. At this moment, the evil officer demands his right to an attorney. Luckily, the detective had anticipated this request, so she asked Jaylen to sign a search warrant which allowed the police to seize his personal items, including his car. Jaylen 27 pleaded guilty to 20 felony and misdemeanor charges related to sex acts with underage girls, as well as attempts to meet up with minors for sexual purposes. A San Diego County judge sentenced a former sheriff's deputy to 12 years in state prison. Police officers often use their positions to break the law and get away with it, but in these last 3 cases, these police officers paid the ultimate price for taking a life. In 2009, Los Angeles police detectives re-examined cold case files and stumbled upon the file belonging to Sherry Rasmussen. She had been found dead in her house on February 24, 1986, with evidence of being beaten and shot 3 times. DNA was retrieved from a bite mark on her arm, but since nothing else provided further evidence, the case was assumed to be a burglary gone wrong. However, the wheels turn when successful police detective Stephanie Lazarus is called in to help with the case. She is told that the case is highly confidential, so she is escorted to a private room. As the interrogation starts, Stephanie quickly realizes that she is in trouble. She starts vehemently accusing her colleagues of calling her a suspect in the murder. At the time, Stephanie and Sherry were friends and had both dated a guy named John Rutan. However, John married Sherry, creating an assumption that Stephanie was jealous. Stephanie is asked to provide a DNA sample and she refuses, but later agrees, hoping that her willingness to cooperate will help her case. Her DNA is matched to the bite mark on Sherry's hand, and Stephanie is charged with first-degree murder. In a momentous and arduous trial, the jury reached a pivotal decision. With solemn resolve, the jury, in the aforementioned case, pronounced the defendant, Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, guilty of the heinous crime of murdering Sherry Rasmussen in the first degree. On March 8, 2012, Lazarus was sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. Sadly, she's not the only cop to have committed a murder and nearly gotten away with it. On February 23, 2017, James Appleton pulled into a parking lot on Gan Ridge Road in Gateway, presumably to answer a phone call. Suddenly, a truck pulls up next to his car and a piercing gunshot is heard before the truck speeds off. The police arrive at the scene and find James Appleton dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Later, former police chief and constable Grant Hardin is picked up by police officers outside a restaurant where he was having dinner with his family. He is taken in for questioning, but first he is read his rights. Grant immediately starts using his right to remain silent. The officers try to question him, but he refuses to speak, maintaining his right to keep silent. Deep down, he hopes that the detectives will release him, since silence is not an admission of guilt. However, the detectives use various methods to get him to talk, like bringing in his family and being friendly. When Grant continues being silent, one of the detectives finally reveals that he had been seen committing the heinous act. A passerby who knows Grant very well had seen his truck parked behind Appleton's car before the dooming shot was heard. Grant's DNA is taken and he is charged with first-degree murder. However, a sinister truth emerges as it is revealed that Grant's DNA is already in the system as a rapist. In November 1997, an elementary school teacher had been accosted by a man in the bathroom holding a gun. She had been raped, and the assaulter was careful not to leave behind any evidence. Hardin raped Amy Harrison on November 9, 1997 at Frank Tillery Elementary School. The teacher used her clothes to wipe the man's ejaculation, and this is what brought Grant Hardin down. Grant is serving a 21-year sentence for killing James Appleton in February 2017 and 14 years for raping Amy Harrison. This last case is one of foolishness and drunkenness. Still recovering from the hangover of the night before, police detective Michael Nealey is brought into the interrogation room for questioning. He is asked about what had happened the previous night, but he gives one-word answers, still not understanding what had happened. He then interjects and asks what is happening, only to learn that his close friend and police chief Johnny Miller is dead. Michael doesn't remember anything, but details of what happened come forward. Michael and Miller were at the Hilton Hotel in Pensacola Beach to attend a conference. They had an early dinner and retired to their room, where neighbors claimed they made so much noise. Noise complaints were issued, prompting a maintenance man to check the room. He finds Michael sitting on Miller's chest. It is assumed that Miller and Michael engaged in a drunken brawl that ended when Michael beat Miller to death. Neighbors reported they heard someone shouting, "Stop it, Mike," with the voice getting quieter each time. Michael, unable to believe he had murdered his best friend, could only sit as the realization dawned on him. Michael is charged with second-degree homicide and is being held in Escambia County Jail on a $500,000 bond. As these cases unfold, the question as to whether we can trust the very people supposed to help us lingers in our minds. What's your opinion? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more gripping stories. See you in the next video.